What's stopping us? Why not live our best life now? And there's a way to have it all.
Welcome to the Legacy Branding Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Beauparlant, here to guide you through the journey of selling your business and building a personal brand that leaves a lasting impact. On the show, we'll explore real-life founder stories, expert insights, and actionable strategies to help you navigate the transition, avoid post-sale crisis, and create your impact-driven legacy brand. Whether you're thinking of selling, building to sell, or already on the other side, this podcast is your go-to resource for making your next evolution your best one yet. Let's dive in. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jennifer Cahill to the Legacy Branding Podcast. Jennifer is an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, podcast host, executive coach, and thought leader with over 20 years of experience. By the age of 38, she had built and sold her first business, a legal staffing company, and since then, she has continued to inspire and innovate. Jennifer is the co-founder of OptiMatch, a revolutionary platform using algorithms to match people based on their motivating factors. She is deeply committed to exploring the intersection of science, spirituality, and consciousness, hosting conversations and series with luminaries like Deepak Chopra and Don Hoffman. And when she's not transforming lives through her work, Jennifer is giving back by building schools in third world countries. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's great to be here with you and your listeners.
So I want to start because we've met since you've sold your business, and I found it quite fascinating to learn that it was a legal staffing company that you used to own, because I know you now. I know the Jennifer Cahill of today. And so your journey from legal staffing to bridging this world of business, spirituality, and human connection is really fascinating to me. So I'd love for you to share how that transformation unfolded.
Yeah, it was quite a surprise to me too. As I often tell people, I'm as surprised as anybody to be a CEO of a technology company. I always say to people, Laura, you know how we say, never will I ever, dot, dot, dot. Never will I ever be in technology, get a divorce. Whatever we say we will never do winds up being our fate oftentimes. Such was my fate in terms of the 180-degree pivot that I did post exit of my first company. So essentially, when I was very, very young, I got three job offers, one to be an enterprise rent-a-car manager, yay, another to be in lending, and a third one to get into the recruiting field, which I knew nothing about at the time. And I took the recruiting job and worked in one job, a very short one for about 3 months, and then went on to my first real job for about 5 years, where I broke every company record and eventually went on to open my first company, which was completely a failure. So before I opened the staffing firm, it was ironic. Nobody even noticed this. Our old website of the first company was JHCCS, and it was J Hill's Career Consulting Services was the original name of the company. And I opened a career consulting company in my late 20s and epically failed. I went from making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to $5,000.
Oh boy.
Went back and forth to Europe 3 times. But epic failure. I did not know what I was doing. And thank God my ex-husband at the time inspired me. And he said, well, why don't you just open up your own legal recruiting company? I went to work with a few partners for a couple of months and I had more business than I knew what to do with. So fast forward, I accidentally build a legal staffing firm and we accidentally become very popular. And I read a couple white papers in it. And I accidentally get acquired. I got recruited just completely out of the blue. There was a company, a very large accounting firm called Markham LLP, that a subsidiary of them, their CEO of the subsidiary reached out and said, hey, we want to buy you. I said, hey, okay, I'm ready for something new. And actually, it's a cool story. Our VP who took over for me and EVP who took over the company, they just went through their own acquisition. The accounting firm just went through a $2 billion acquisition and they're still being included in it. So 7 years post acquisition, our team is still intact and profitable. And
Amazing.
so that was a cool thing. So fast forward, I sell the company. I'm supposed to run it for several years. And do you want to know the real bizarre story of what happened or do you want me to give you?
100%.
Okay.
You bet.
Here is the weird, bizarre story of what happened. So I meet a man, fall in love. He happens to live in New York, which is where the company that bought me is. And so I spend a lot of time going back and forth. And one night we're out to dinner with an A-list actor who lived in our building. And he says, I have this amazing dream coach who helps me to figure out what I'm going to do next. And she helps me divine my next role. It's something all of us A-list actors do. I was like, can she help with normal corporates like me? I said, because I just built my company and I have no idea what I'm going to do after my tenure with them for running the company is over. And he said, sure. So he puts me in touch with her. And it's quintessentially LA, Laura. I go and meet this woman in LA at Beverly Hills Hotel. Baby, she's like an ex supermodel. And she's like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to write a note to your higher self. Dear higher self, show me through a dream symbols, blah, 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 what my higher self wants me to know about my next career. And I was like, well, okay, I'm willing. I meditate. I'm into some of the steps. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it with a grain of salt. That night, I light the candle, write the note to my higher self. I go to bed, Laura. In the middle of the night, you're supposed to write down any dreams you have, anything like that, or record it. And so I do. The next morning, I'm debriefing with her, and she said, oh, my love, what did you see? I said, oh, well, I saw a male newscaster, among other things, in my dream. She says, oh, baby, you're going to be on TV. I said, sweetheart, let me be really straight with you. I just sold a company that I have golden handcuffs for XYZ amount of years. Even if I wanted to be on television, I couldn't. Oh, no, my love, you're going to be on TV in 6 months. I was like, okay, sure. So through the wildest series of serendipities in the history of all time, Laura, about 6 months after she told me that, we were able to come to a negotiation with our team where the EVP took over the company for me, who's still there now 7 years later, and our VP took over the company. And all I had to do, this is right before COVID, was consult 10 hours a week. And I just couldn't use my name because I had sold the name and the company business and all of that. So I had to be very careful of how I use the name, etc. So fast forward, the same week that I terminate my running the company contract with them, I get offered a TV hosting gig with a new network called Awake TV. And I get offered to co-moderate a panel with Deepak Chopra 2 months later, who I've never even read a single book by him. And next thing you know, on December 31st of 2019, I had balls of steel. And I told the people who had invited me to co-moderate the panel with Deepak Chopra and Don Hoffman, I said, hey, just let them know I saved them a spot on my new show. Now that was a reach and a stretch because it's a big network and show is a very loose term that we're using at this point. And I will always remember I was actually in Napa Valley with some girlfriends for a friend's birthday and I get a phone call from an 858 number and I knew immediately, Laura, it was Deepak. And it was like Deepak's team was calling me. They want this sort of car for him. He'll meet you in studio. I didn't have a studio. I didn't know what to do. So I'm like scrambling, pulling papers, trying to get a studio.
Booking a car. Yeah.
I didn't even
And a
know. I
studio.
have my best friend drive him. If I'm being totally honest, I didn't even understand what they meant by booking a car because I've never dealt with that in my life. So within 3 months, I've done a complete 180. I've opened another company that was a consulting company at that point. We do the talk with Deepak and Don and I would do the first show, and that wound up being a 17-part series with Deepak Chopra, Don Hoffman, and myself called Conversations at the Intersection of Cutting Edge Science and Spirituality. Simultaneously, that next year, I'm now having fun. And everything else. COVID is happening, shutting everybody else down. I decided to pack up my apartment before COVID. And I was like, well, I don't have to be anywhere. Why not just travel the world? So I wound up being locked down first in London, then in Paris. Yes, you can play me the smallest violin in the world. And while I was just enjoying the sabbatical year and doing TV shows just here and there, I actually got to host. That was fun on the red carpet, the A-list actor right before COVID shut everything down. I wound up hosting a TV thing on the red carpet post Oscars. So it was just so
Wow.
and serendipitous. Fast forward, it's the end of that year. I'm now in Paris. I'm going on croissant hunts. And there's a woman I met at a spiritual retreat vis-a-vis this whole Deepak thing that I got involved in, who invited me to co-found the company that we now have. It was originally called Om Heals, now called OptiMatch. And she was a famous is a famous YouTube influencer who said, Jen, you're gifted at knowing who matches with who. It's what you did for 20 years in recruiting. Could we create an algorithm? Actually, Julian Adler, my now co-founder, said it too. Could we create an algorithm that mirrors your intuition for matching people? And then we spent 8 months developing an algorithm, another year and a half testing it. And now we're being used by companies and consultants and a variety of other people around the world. So it was the most circuitous path one could imagine, from running a corporate like a legal recruiting company, selling to a big accounting firm, then doing TV shows with Deepak Chopra to now running a technology company.
That is so fascinating, but it also connects some dots. So, if you think back, you mentioned about the recruiting, like your ability to match people with the right jobs. you've now translated that into a different use perhaps, but you've turned that into a technology company. So it's not as far
Leap.
of a departure or a leap as I thought originally,
Yeah.
because I can see that now.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing that I always tell people. I get a lot of CEOs who I talk to and mentor and coach. And I always tell them to we have our gifts, Laura. Like your gift is you're so creative and you're good at seeing the bigger picture and helping people understand how their brand is a reflection of who they are. And there are so many different ways that you could do that. And the same is true of me is my gift is connection and contribution. Those are two of my greatest values. So no matter what I do, whether I'm hosting a television show, whether I'm building a school, or whether I'm running a technology company, my come from is going to be contribution and connection.
I love that. So while that was a significant milestone of selling the business, it sounds like you slid right into the next thing, or it was just handed to you by the universe. And I love that because so many people I talk to end up selling their business, whether it's planned or unplanned, which it sounds like yours came out of the blue, that they suddenly have sold their business and they don't know who they are anymore, or they are now running a business, but they're an employee, not the founder. And so that shift they go through is quite
Over.
significant. So this idea of the dream, this woman who helped you, do you think that was a pivotal thing? Like, I think a lot of people might go, that sounds really whatever. It depends on your level of
That's why you
spirituality.
want to know the real story because I was even skeptical of it. I was like, okay, listen, I know I meditate. I do transcendental meditation every day, heart focused breathing by heart, and that's all scientifically proven. And so even for me, that was a stretch for my logical mind to latch on to.
I love it. So what does speaking of spirituality, what role does that play in your approach to entrepreneurship, to decision making, especially with the launch of this business and everything you do? I mean, we've known each other now for a couple of years and I just see the way that you sort of operate in the world, and it is with this level of spirituality and consciousness, and you are in my eyes a wildly successful entrepreneur and thought leader, and I'd love to hear how that fits in.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it and I receive it. And in terms of spirituality, I like to mix the logical and the esoteric because there's one side of my brain that my idea of a good time is doing logic puzzles. If A can't go next to B, but needs to be in the right of C, where does E go? Like that's my idea of a good time. So I have this very left brain logical side. And then I have the wildly creative side of my brain that loves to paint and loves to meditate and do all this deep work. So the way that I've really found to integrate it, it really ties into the episodes that Deepak and Don and I did of the intersection, conversations at the intersection of science and spirituality, which is where I feel like I'm at that apex. And how that looks for me is every day I start my day with a very robust practice of about hour and a half, 2 hours of meditation, journaling. One of my favorite things that I've been training a lot of other entrepreneurs and executives on is a way to refine our intuition. Because as Laura, being an entrepreneur and many of you out there listening, one of the most important things we have in business is our ability to know when to say yes and when to say no. Do we take this deal? Do we take this new client? Do we turn it down? Well, what if there was a way that you could fine tune and hone scientifically? And I'm all for empirically validating things where you could empirically validate your own intuition. So, one of the ways that I've been teaching other entrepreneurs to do this that I came up with myself a few years ago is I write down every morning, Laura, a set of 20 questions. I recommend starting with 5 or 10 if you're just starting off, so it's not an overwhelming practice. So, before you go into any meditation or breath work, whatever it is that's part of your morning ritual, or even just sitting in silent contemplation, you write down these 5 to 10 questions. I recommend starting with questions that are verifiable, like simple ones. Will it rain today? Okay, yes or no. Will all of my meetings happen today? Yes or no. Here's a personal favorite of mine. I use, is it in my highest and best good to buy or sell crypto today? Cryptocurrency has been great. I've really been funding my current company, so I'm thankful for that. But is it a good day to buy or sell crypto? And I have to say, I've about 80% efficacy on it. So what you do is that you write down these questions in advance. Then, when you're done with your morning silence, your morning meditation, whatever your ritual looks like, I only ask that people connect to the quiet stillness, because that's where our intuition comes from. That's why most of us as entrepreneurs might make the wrong choice and turn right instead of left, where left would have been the easier, smoother path. So you sit quietly. Then I have them written on my phone, but you could have them written on a piece of paper, whatever you prefer. You ask out loud, is it in my highest and best good to do X? Do I take this meeting? Do all my meetings happen? Now, everybody is different, Laura. Some people are very visual. They might see a yes or a no. Some people will feel it in their body. Like my husband's very physically attuned, so it'll feel like a pull for him if it's a yes or a no. For me, I'm more auditory where I'll hear a yes or a no. So it's a different for every person. You have to feel into yourself and see how it shows up for you. And then I'll go through this list of questions and then I check the accuracy at the end of the day. And every day I'm cross checking how accurate was what I heard today. Was it a good day to sell if I sold? Was it a good day to buy? Was there rain today? Fun one. I travel a lot. I'll say, is it in my highest and best good to fly back home? I flew back yesterday from Paris to Lisbon. Will my plane take off on time? No kidding. I did this recently. I forget where I was traveling from. And I said, will my plane take off on time? I heard no. If you want to refine it, you can, I said, what time or how long delayed will it be? And I heard 30 minutes. And I write this all down and I showed my husband as this last flight we were on took off exactly 30 minutes later. Cross check and you see how accurate is what I'm hearing. And you might start off with 30% or 40% accuracy. You might get one or two or three questions right out of 10. But over time, you'll start to refine it. And so many business people I know, like one of my people I coach, what got an offer on Shark Tank and she was considering the offer. And I taught her how to do this just to feel in her body what a yes and no felt like. And I said, is it in your highest and best good to take XYZ Shark's offer? And she said, no, she could see, she could clearly feel it was the wrong answer, the wrong move for her. And she's very, very happy now that she didn't go with that offer from that particular shark.
Wow. I think that it's probably a lot for some people to wrap their head around, but I
It's science. If anybody wants science, one of my dear friends who I love and adore, Dr. Roland McCready at HeartMath, has been studying this for 40 years. Most of us don't know, Laura, that we actually have three brains. We have our normal brain, which all of us are familiar with. We have our heart has its own brain with its own neurons that actually our heart sends more information to our brain than vice versa. And then, of course, our gut
Mm.
has its own brain. So for anybody out there, I'm as logical as the next person. Please go check it out. Check out some of Roland McCrady's research on intuition. They've done studies on this. One of my favorite heart math studies, I think I saw Greg Braden do a special on Guy on it years ago, was heart math ran a series of tests where they would flash images that were provocative images like a snake or somebody you had passed, or serene images like a lake or a flower. And a few seconds before the image would come onto the screen, before there's any way the person could have logically known it, their heart would escalate and jump up before a jarring image and would remain calm before a calm image. But this was seconds or milliseconds before the brain would be able to register any image.
Wow. I think it's also fascinating. And I'm a very logical person too, in many ways. But I think I've been in the last number of years really tapping a lot more into my own intuition and really paying more attention. And I think we all have it probably from as children, and then we don't outgrow it, but everything else sort of takes over. And I think we all have a lot more intuition. And it sounds like what you're saying is we all do. We just don't necessarily realize how to tap into it.
Yeah, that's it. And it's very simple. Just spend time in silence. Dr. Sister Jenna, a friend of mine who runs a meditation museum out of Washington, D.C., she told me a practice where her team, what they do is at the top of every hour, they spend 1 minute in silence. That's it. Even if you just spend 1 minute in silence off your phone, not responding, cultivating that inner stillness is what gives us access to our deeper wisdom, to making the right choice at the right time, and to doing things from a higher consciousness place rather than from fear. Because as business people all the time, we do things with fear. I'll be very frank with you. There was a day a couple days ago where I was told not to sell, like crypto, right? And my husband and I are sitting around and he tells me about some things happening in Korea. And I was like, oh God, sell. Terrible decision. It went up by like 10K after that. I didn't listen to myself. But we make choices sometimes out of fear. So the question is, how do we cultivate the restriction to not make a choice out of fear and the ability to use our discernment to make the right choices at the right time.
And I think we often fall into this trap of being productive all the time. Like you're going for a walk, listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook, you're in the car, do the same. And that was me. I was always filling my time with something else, another voice in my head. And so now I go for walks or I go for bike rides with nothing. And that is when I'm in the silence, and it is when I do my best thinking. I've joked before that my clients pay me to go for bike rides because that's when my most creative thing around language, especially like helping them with their messaging. Like I've literally created my clients taglines on a bike ride
Mm.
because that's just when I'm most creative and I'm not influenced by sitting in front of my computer or by my phone, social media, a podcast in my ears. It's just me and I'm moving my body as well. So really tapping into that silence and aloneness and not feeling like I have to be productive because that is actually productive, just not in the way that we often associate it with.
You just hit on something so important, Laura, and that's the idea of aloneness as opposed to loneliness. With numbers
Mhm.
skyrocketing to 24 to 27% globally of people who experience feeling very or fairly lonely often, I think that the delineation between loneliness and aloneness, can I be by myself and still experience joy, satisfaction, well being without being lonely? And I think with all of the emergence of devices, and like you said, so many distractions, podcasts, social media, everything out there is vying for our attention. What if we could just cultivate that inner quiet and not be tempted to squirrel, go here, go there? And I admire and respect that you have that practice and that you've realized that's where your creativity comes from. Many of us never even get there.
Yeah, and I think for entrepreneurs, if they're listening that are maybe thinking of selling or have just sold their business and really trying to figure out what is next, I think that is probably the best thing to do is to have some of that quiet time and that aloneness to sit with what is it that you really want to do? What is the legacy that you want to create?
Yeah. May I add something on from a friend of mine's
Yeah,
that
please.
ago? There was a great book that a friend of mine, a financial planner guy, Curtis Estes, wrote called Your Life by Design. I want to say was the title. And in the book, he gives this pyramid, almost kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So for any of you out there, say you're considering making a transition, you have made the transition, I encourage you to use this exercise. You basically write a triangle out. And on the bottom level of the triangle or the pyramid is you write down everything you hate. For me, taking out the garbage isn't that. It's like, because you are going to forcibly make me do it, it is something that I will pay somebody else to do until the cows come home. I do not want to touch the garbage. So you put on the lowest rung of this pyramid or this triangle the things that suck your joie de vivre, that do not bring you joy or happiness. Then above that, you put the things that, oh, I'd really rather not do. Maybe it's posting your own stuff on social media, whatever it is, you write that down above. Then you get to a higher rung on the triangle and you write down the things that you enjoy most of the time doing, like maybe it's recording podcasts, maybe it's going for runs, whatever it is. And then you get to the top of the pyramid. And that tippy top point is the things that light you up. As the creator of Peter Pan once said, it's only work if you'd rather be doing something else. So when you get to the
Mm.
top of the pyramid, that's where you get to play with the infinite possibilities of your zone of genius, of the things that bring you great joy. And then once you have a sense of that, like for me, I love connecting with people. I love connecting other people together with one another. Once you find that zone of genius, then there are infinite possibilities.
I love that triangle. I think I'm gonna go and do that.
I do it often. It's important to know what lights us up. Another friend of mine just wrote a best-selling book called What Lights You Up. And how many of us forgot what lights us up? Maybe it's just dancing. I forgot for years until I sold that company. I hadn't danced for years, Laura, literally years. Now there's not a day that goes by that I don't dance just for the joy of it.
I love that. We often have we call them kitchen dance parties at our house. 'Cause we've got there's always music, and we have dinner making music, we have dinner eating music, we have And sometimes there's like an impromptu kitchen dance party happening at my house, the whole family.
Yeah, and you know what? Why not? Why not have kitchen dance parties? I remember a lot of people ask me, like, how, why do you travel so much? And I remember seeing my parents and grandparents saying, oh, one day maybe you get to the age of 65 or 70 and you travel. And I know you and I both have a shared love of traveling because we often see each other in other countries and
Yes,
places.
we do.
And what's stopping us? Why not? Why not live our best life now? And there's a way to have it all. It doesn't, I love to ask people, how can we have and both that works for everybody? So that's my intention, is to inspire us all to live a life of our dreams and to give ourselves permission to do so.
I love that. So what does legacy mean to you? And it sounds like what you've just shared is definitely a piece of that.
To me, legacy is about having no regrets, knowing that you built one thing. It could be one podcast that you did that maybe one day your children, your grandchildren can look back, or future entrepreneurs can listen to it. It doesn't mean that you have to run out and build schools or create something unbreakable and be written about in books. It just means knowing that you've squeezed the drops out of life and that you've swallowed them full and felt fulfilled and nourished by those drops that you've swallowed. To me, that's what legacy is. And then being the light for somebody else to see that they have the capacity to do the same. Whether you do it for one person or a billion people, that doesn't matter. It's the legacy you're leaving that you uplift one other person while you're on this earth.
That's definitely making it into a clip from this podcast episode. I'm like, oh, wow, Jennifer, that was so beautiful squeezed every drop out of life. Man, couldn't agree with you more. And I that's why you and I connect so deeply, I think. And that was so beautifully said. And I hope that people will listen to that and then re-listen to it and figure out for themselves how they can do that in their lives.
Yeah, that's it. Let's taste life. Let's not sit on
Yeah.
play. No, let's not sit on the sidelines and watch everybody else play. There's this term called NPCs, non-playing characters. Let's be a playing
Mhm.
character. Let's get out there. Let's get dirty. Let's fail miserably and get up and wipe the sweat and dust and tears off our face. I'm reading a wonderful book right now by Kristen Hanna, who's a prolific fiction author and has written many great books. And it's called, I think, The Women is one I'm reading now. And it's about the Vietnam War, and, of course, it's a fictional story, but I would imagine that there's a lot of basis of real characters that went into it. And in the story, you have this young woman who has it all laid out for her. She grows up in San Diego under wealth and privilege, and yet she chooses to go to war. She chooses to be there and to hold the hands of men and women who are dying over there, and to go out there just to know that she lived a life worth living. And it doesn't mean that we have to go fight a war or do that, but it does mean that we give ourselves permission to get on the field. To, like, you're the one, you do it best, Laura, a life worth dying for. It's one of your best keynotes that you give. What's a life worth dying for? And are we willing, when we put our feet on the ground every morning, to go out there and to be able to take the steps, no matter how scary, how uncertain, how we might feel like we're waiting in the darkness and abyss of life and not knowing whether to go right or left? Are we still willing to stand up and try?
Wow, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this podcast. And let's go out there, Jennifer, and let's just taste life together. And I think that what you're doing and the ideas and the business and all the things you bring to the world and to entrepreneurs and to me, you are a connector. I feel like I get emails from you all the time connecting me with somebody that needs to know me or I need to know. And that is such a gift that you bring to the world. So how can people find you? Where can they learn more about OptiMatch?
Yeah, thank you. If anybody wants to try, it's complimentary. You can do our om.app, om.app/survey. Find out how you're motivated. See if you're motivated by fun, or maybe you're motivated by information, and use that information to empower yourself in your relationships with others. And if you want to follow me, you can also find me at Jennifer K as in Kite Hill, at Jennifer K Hill on YouTube, where you can find a lot of the episodes, things I've done. You can catch a few of the Deepak episodes there, and would be happy to connect if anybody wants to find me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Everyone go out and follow Jennifer. She is an amazing light in this world. Keep doing what you do, Jennifer.
Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you.
You too.
Thanks for tuning into the Legacy Branding Podcast. I hope today's episode has inspired and empowered you on your journey to building a brand that truly matters. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other founders who you think would benefit from listening. And if you're ready to take the next step in building your legacy brand, visit our website, labcreative.ca, to learn more and book a call. Don't forget to join us next time for more conversations that will help you navigate your transition and create your legacy. Until then, I'm Laura Beauparlant.